So namaste, dear friends. Namaste, Chandra. So nice to see you. How are you doing, my dear Chandra?
Namaste, Kausthub. Namaste to Menaka.
Thank you. My mother will very much appreciate that. So happy to see you.
I am well, and I am happy to have this conversation with you today.
Yes. And dear friends, before we begin the conversation with Chandra, can you just gently comment that you are hearing us very well, that you are seeing us very well, so that we know that everything is working on the digital front as it should. Thank you, my dear friends. So, dear Chandra, welcome to the conversation called Viniyoga Women. This is the third conversation we are having. We began this conversation this year so that we can highlight how important Viniyoga is for women, and of course yoga is for women, because traditionally yoga was taught mostly as something which was exclusively for men. But today we are very fortunate that the majority of yoga is practiced by women. And today we have a very, very special lady, Chandra Cuffaro, originally from Switzerland, but she has been living in Italy for many, many years now. And she is a very, very long time student of TKV Desikachar, my father. And she's also one of the rare people still alive who has met my grandfather, Acharya Krishnamacharya. And we are very, very happy to talk to her today about her experiences with Viniyoga and how it has impacted her life, and what advice she can offer for all of us in the future, etc. So welcome, Chandra. And if you would like to say a few words of introduction about yourself, or if you just simply want to begin with a nice chanting, which I know you are a great lover of chanting, it would be perfect. Thank you, Chandra.
Chanting is all right.
Please.
Shanno mitra shamvarunaha, Shanno bhavatvaryama, Shanna indro brihaspatihi, Shanno vishnurukramaha, Namo brahmane, Namaste vayo. Tvameva pratyaksham brahmasi, Tvameva pratyaksham brahma vadishyami, Ritam vadishyami, Satyam vadishyami, Tanmam avatu, Tadvaktaramavatu, avatu mam, avatu bhaktaram. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaskaram to everyone who is listening now.
Namaskaram, Chandra. So we are so blessed to have you today. And dear friends, Chandra is, I would call, an elder statesman of Viniyoga today in the world. She is, let's just put it very simply, she is in the later half of the 80s, so she is a very dynamic young lady now. And I have been very fortunate to have known Chandra for so many years. I think many, many years, because
Chandra, since you were a boy.
Yes, I was just about to say, since Chandra was already coming to India when I was a a very young boy running around in the house. So, anyways, Chandra, that raises the first question I have. It would be very nice if you could share with our friends today who are listening in how you came to meet my father to start the study of Viniyoga under him, and maybe some memories that you have. So that would be a very, very auspicious way to start this meeting today.
Well, I was many years in India. I was married to a Brahmin gentleman from the same Shatakopa Gotram. And from a very young age, living in India in those days brought you into contact with the culture, the traditions, and everything. In those days, the traditions were centered around culturally with music and dance, Rukmini Devi, and other great dancers who were then alive. And J. Krishnamurti, a modern sage who tried to give the Upanishadic texts in a modern way. And your grandfather, Krishnamacharya. These were highlights in those days. And so when people came together, one would say, have you heard the latest of GK? Have you heard the latest of Krishnamacharya, of Desikachar? So I came to know your father like this as a young man, as an engineer, who was interested in yoga. That by itself was very strange and immediately brought interest. And the way he was able to talk about yoga was so normal, was so down to earth, it captivated everyone. It was not anything of another world. It was so practical. And so we were all fascinated. And I could say the elite of Madras society, culturally speaking, we all came to the Saturday morning classes that your father held on Saturday mornings at 8 o'clock. That was my introduction to yoga. And it was only much later that I came to practice yoga as far as asana and pranayama are concerned. And but I was always fascinated the way your father could explain the old texts, not just Yoga Sutra, but also Upanishad. And the Vedic tradition came alive in his presence. And that was the greatest boon at that time for the whole of India, for all those who could listen. It was very special. It was down to earth. It was nothing special. It was down to earth and practical and practicable. And then, of course, then I came, I wanted to know more. And so I came also for a private practice and all that. But I was always fascinated by his openness. He really put into practice, there is a Vedic saying that says, let noble thoughts come from everywhere, from all sides. that is what your father, his openness was like that. He was open to all what was noble from anywhere, from any side. And his care and attention that he gave to the students who came to him with ailments, that is something that had to be seen. I was lucky to be there at the time whenever he had students coming and he saw us, he would say, "Hey, Chandra, come on, come sit with me." To sit with him was such a boon. It was such a pleasure because you would sit and you would forget yourself. You would just listen and look. In 2 minutes, he was able to know what that person whom he never met before was liking and not liking, and what hobby he had. And he would thrive and put that into the practice so that the practice was liked. So if a person came who he found out that music was his ideal, then he would give a pranayama based on sarigama.
Yes.
If a person like Rukmini Devi came to him and she was fascinated with the yoga of Iyengar, and she said, "I practice headstand every day." And he said, "Oh, do you? Wonderful. Now I will teach you to practice headstand sitting in your armchair. You visualize it. It will be good for you." So without telling her, no, don't practice headstand, it is bad for you. And he said, yes, but sit in your armchair and practice it. That was his openness. That was his attention. That was his care. His care was so very personal, so directed to the need of the person that somehow he could feel and see. And then there was his acceptance of how we are, who we are, what we have done, what we have not done. He accepted us as we were. He never wanted to change us, but he was able to bring the best out of everyone. So I remember one particular time, I think we had a Bhagavad Gita class up in the old house when one had that spiral staircase. And as we came down, there were about 5 or 7 people in the early morning. And then one person remarked, walking behind me, Chandra is, she is a Westerner, but she behaves like an Indian. And the other one said, if she would have her hair cut and not wear a sari, she would be just the same. Your father heard it. And he said, no. She came here when she was very young. And she was taken in by the culture that was in her family. And so it became hers. She is not, it is her, it has become her swabhava. I was so thankful because I was feeling that I was trashed off all this Western trash who do not understand anything. I was so thankful to your father. He sort of was able to help me out in many occasions. Like that, he was able to see the best in everyone and make that best grow. Not just see it, but make it grow. And he had this ability to inspire. To inspire because he steered free of all the religious symbols and images. He was able to stay with the pure spirituality that could touch anyone, could be understood by anyone from whatever background they came from. So, and then one day I remember he said, Chandra, come. This is the last time you can meet my father. And so he rushed me in. There was no one. And he told your father who I am. And your father asked, your grandfather then started a blessing. As I prostrated, and the prostration went on, I suppose, for half an hour, because the chanting went on and on and on. And I could not get up before he stopped chanting and told me to go up. So the prostration went on and on and on and on. Chanting went on, and it was all a blessing. And afterwards, your father told me it was a blessing so that you can teach. And that, with that blessing of your grandfather, I had the courage to teach. And your father immediately made me teach because he felt I was able to do something. So, combined with the blessing of your grandfather and your father who put me right to practice, I started to teach in the mandiram. And then when I went back to Europe, I had the courage and the energy to start teaching also here. That is all thanks to what I have received.
That's so wonderful and inspiring, Chandra. And thanks for sharing that story about the sari and the haircut and things like that, which is very funny. But I know that personally, my father never saw you as one of the other Westerners or things like that, because I remember many, many occasions, and I'm sure you will also remember this, when we used to have our Paduka Puja where the chanting was done. You were always made by my father to sit along with our Indian teachers, not with the Western students.
Yes.
I always
Yes.
remember that because he always considered you as somebody who had, like you rightly said, Indian swabhava absorbed into your full psyche. So I think that's wonderful. You shared a little bit about my grandfather, where he blessed you to teach, and that was a very touching moment as well. But what I would like to ask you is, I'm sure that's not the only time you met my grandfather. You would have met him in other occasions, saw him in other moments as well. Can you share some things that you remember about him? Because there are very few people, less and less people who are there who have met him, and certainly our audiences of today, many people have not had the privilege to meet him.
Yes.
Can you please share some?
Your father, your grandfather used to teach yoga in Kalakshetra. I also used to teach in Kalakshetra. Both of us were invited by Rukmani Devi to teach, and he taught yoga. And I don't remember what age he was, but probably he was my age, or in the 90s already. So the teaching of yoga was outside under the banyan tree, where the prayers used to be held. And there was a row of stone seats where the teachers were sitting. So he jumped over. He came, he jumped over. And just to see this old man jumping over those seats made you awake. And then he would stand there absolutely straight, fold his hand, and start to pray. And then he would teach. And then I do not know, after some time, Rukmini Devi asked me, said he is not coming anymore. I think, I do not know what happened, but she asked me to come and teach. So I had to take over from your grandfather. Imagine.
Yes, I can imagine the pressure.
That was very special. And then in those days, I remember I met a lady, an elderly lady. She came walking on a stick, and she told me, "Are you a student of Krishnamacharya?" So I said, "Well, yes. Yes and no." She said, "What do you mean, yes and no?" I said, "Yes, I got his blessings, but I am a student of Desikachar." And then she said, "Oh, he taught me when I was a child that she had polio, and your grandfather used to go to her house and teach her, and she would weep. Her mother and father forced her to undergo this in order to be able to walk. And in the beginning, she would weep. She would not do the practices. And then at her old age, she told me, if only I had done them as he told me, I would be able to walk. Now you see, I am walking with a stick only. But even then, I told her, at least you are walking. Some are not walking at all. So
That's wonderful.
these are very special moments that show the great care that he had, your grandfather had, and that was passed down to your father for those who were suffering. And when they were young, he would train them very, very strongly. And not everybody could take that.
Exactly. Not everybody could take that. Yes. This is this is so true because not everybody was ready to be his student, and that's the thing that is challenging today because students want their teachers to be a particular way, not the other way around, or not even the other way around. Because, like you said earlier, um, my father never wanted to change the students. He accepted them as
Yes.
they are. But today, the funny thing is, each student wants the teacher to be a certain way which fits their expectation or projection of how the teacher should be. And I think that is very
Oh,
interesting.
yeah, that is a modern superstructure
Yes,
out of which we have to grow.
yes. So, Chandra, I have another important question for you because this topic is also about yoga, Viniyoga for women, and things like that. You have not just had the chance to learn from my father and meet my grandfather, etc. You are a lover of Vedic chanting, and I know that you have learned quite a bit of chanting with my mother as well. So, if you could
Yes.
share some experiences of my mother, and just before that, a little bit of history as well of what drew you to Vedic chanting and what is that fascinated about it, and then a little bit about what you did with my mother.
Well, your mother was my main teacher in Vedic chanting, but we were also co-students of your father. And there is one thing very nice I want to share with all. I do not know whether your mother will remember, but there was a time when we learned about Nata Muni. Your father was talking about Nata Muni and Nata Muni's teaching for women and for women above all in pregnancy. And he was elaborating so beautifully how that creature in the womb grows. And that creature in the womb is conscious. And the womb itself becomes conscious. And it is in the consciousness that that creature grows. And that was put so wonderfully. At the end of the lecture, Menaka and I don't remember who else was there, maybe 2 or 3 other women, I don't remember. But Menaka and I, we looked at each other. We started laughing and we said, oh, now we should be pregnant. And we all, I already had grown-up children and she had 3, you were a young boy at that time. But that is how we felt. That is how your father could bring life into the lectures. So that was one thing. And then, well, when you live in an Indian family, chanting is normal. In the morning, people, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, everyone would chant. Everyone would chant Vishnu Sahasranama and so on. When I delivered my first son, my mother-in-law was next to me chanting Vishnu Sahasranama. So chanting was a normal activity in the house. So It is not that I was suddenly brought to chanting. It was all a life process. You came into chanting because it was part of life, like eating and breathing. And so I thought I would learn the right way. And I learned from your mother. And she was a strict teacher. And while teaching, there was no chattering about other things. She was teaching and I was repeating. That was all. But that was the fundament that remained within me. So today when I chant, I can still hear her voice. Then we also learned chanting from Sir together, sometimes. So it was a life process. Even sometimes when you chant something, there are some words that you want to know. What is the meaning? So sometimes I ask, and she would say, I don't know. So it is, there was no talking during class. There was no diversion from the topic. You listen and repeat.
My mother still is doing that, and some of the students find her very strict, like you said. But that's what is needed to do the chanting, I can guarantee you.
That was what is needed. That is what is needed. I am sorry to say, I am not able to do that, to maintain that strictness here in Italy, for instance. It is difficult because it is not part of the culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Good, Chandra. So, Chandra, I have another question for you. How have you, as a woman yourself, what has touched you about the Viniyoga tradition? What is it that you feel is so unique about it, and how you have, let us say, integrated it? Because many other traditions are, in my way, in my feeling, is a little bit more masculine, very rigid, not flexible. Whereas Vini Yoga is a little bit more, I would say, feminine. So, what is it that you have integrated, and what is it that is so special for you about this?
Well, first of all, we have to be very clear. Vini is something that is alive in nature. If you are connected with nature, you see the gradual growth in nature. There is a thing that happens in January, there is a thing that happens in April and May, there is a thing that happens in summertime, that is a thing that happens in autumn. That is Viniyoga. So Viniyoga is part of life. If you see it in nature, you feel immediately at home with what is called Viniyoga process. Viniyoga process, the women will understand immediately because their life has also been according to a Viniyoga as children, and then you become women and things change. You marry and things change. You have children and things change. You grow older or become grandchildren, you have grandchildren and things change. So also this is Viniyoga, and women can feel it much more than men, I suppose. So it is natural that women are attracted by the gradualness and the progressive steps that Viniyoga tries to apply to all the practices.
It's absolutely right that you say that this feeling comes naturally to women. This is what I have seen in my experience. But I do feel that we are in a moment in history where many women are disconnecting from their femininity and trying to embrace masculinity, whether it's in the household or in the job or in society or different things. um, what is your advice to them? Because I'm a man, I don't want to advise. What is your advice to them? Um, because even with their body, like you said, the body changes so much, but many women, they're not happy with their body shape. They want to be like slim and attractive all the time. They want to be young all the time, which is not going to be possible. They want to work like a man, especially an alpha man who is working like 50, 60, 70 hours a week, which is very disconnected from these natural forces of nature. So what is your advice to them?
It's very difficult because what is happening is a reaction, and reactions are not always healthy, but or mostly not healthy. So to find your own femininity is or today
Not
is not
healthy.
that easy.
So
Uh, I think you can do that only if you are really connected with life and with nature. After all, Prakriti is also feminine. And you have to accept also that there are differences. And you should not try to imitate the male strength that is or was above all a muscular strength, a will strength. The strength of women is different, but it is strength, and it can be much more strong than the men's the men's strength. In olden times, the women were the queens of the household. Whatever had to be done in a household, on the house, what is in the house, had to follow what the women wanted to do. And it was the women who could enforce, which is their strong being themselves. And they could enforce this, not with loud shouting, but with a subtle beingness of being feminine, of acknowledging their non-strength at a physical level, but a different strength. And then the strength at the physical level becomes a tremendous strength when a woman is pregnant, for instance. The birthing process needs a lot of strength that is based on letting go. So when the women discover the strength of letting go, then they find their own strength, which is stronger than any male strength. But each one has to discover that. And we cannot dish it out.
I agree with you, because I always feel strongly that if a man had to go through the delivery process, I don't think I know one man who can manage it. The woman have the great strength, and
They cannot even watch it.
exactly, exactly. There is so much fear even to watch it, let alone go through.
Some will swoon,
Yeah, I know.
and some will close their eyes.
Chandra, I have to tell you, I had the great privilege of being in the room when my daughter was born. I had the great privilege when she was being delivered, and I was the first guy after the doctor to actually hold my daughter. So I have that privilege. I'm not as weak as many others, but certainly I'm not as strong as the women who are delivering. This I can be sure of. That brings to my mind a very interesting question, Chandra, because you also taught a lot of young children and all that. And I wonder about what is your view about yoga for the children. And I have to say to the people that I've been very privileged that my first project in Italy was actually organized by you in 1997. I think we did it in the wonderful place called Mondo Migliore. It was
Yes.
it actually means
Yes.
a better world. So nice. Rocca di Papa. It was such
Yes,
a
that
great
Mondo Migliore,
Mondo
I
Migliore.
think, is now full of immigrants.
Well, that's not so
Hope
bad
it's
as well. But,
Migliore for them.
so I wonder, what is your view about teaching yoga for young children, especially the children of today? I wonder what it is, your view.
Well, if it is taught as a play, then the children will love it. They increase their creativity. We should not start teaching like we teach normally, nor should we insist on the names of the asanas, but we can give name. Each child should give a name to a posture, and because that will stimulate their creativity, which is badly needed today with all these technological things that children already play with. So a teacher who teaches children has himself or herself to be very creative, so that the creativity is spilled over in the teaching and in the way of teaching and in the way they relate with each other.
Great. The other question that I have for you is, what is your experience been of teaching chanting to your students in Italy, for example, which is a very Catholic country, but you have taught them Vedic chanting, which is something quite different from what they are usually used to. What has been your experience? Do you feel that there has been resistance, or do you feel that people have been very open about it? Because this is something that is very important, because what I always tell my
Yes.
students around the world is that our yoga tradition is a Vedic yoga tradition. It's not a tantric tradition. So Vedic chanting is an essential part of this. So what is your experience, Chandra?
It depends how you teach. If you are able to teach chanting in a spiritual way without letting in the images and the symbols of religion, then it is possible. And I think I have tried my best, and I am still getting ideas now, especially in this time when we cannot meet personally and we have to meet only online as we do now. We have to dive into the chanting and extract a meaning that has a meaning for today. If we are able to do that, then the chanting is alive. Otherwise, it is just, I won't even say like parrots, because parrots can understand. I had a parrot, so I know. The parrots do not just imitate, they know what they imitate.
And sometimes they choose not to imitate if we are doing something stupid.
I didn't understand.
Or sometimes they choose not to imitate us. They are not imitating everything we do. They are only imitating some things we do.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, yes. Great, great. Chandra, you also had, for a long time, you were editing a magazine called Viniyoga in Italy. And for this, you had a lot of focus on these magazines. I remember was partly on the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali. What does that Yoga Sutra of Patanjali mean for you personally?
Oh, that what keeps going on, because the Yoga Sutra, they are alive, and each time you take up a Yoga Sutra, you explore it, and you find a new meaning, and you find new connections. Oh, Yoga Sutra is something so wonderful, alive, that and the moment you try to write it down, it is already gone. It is what you fix on paper is overthrown with your next study. You know what I mean?
I know
It
exactly what
is,
you mean.
you think, oh, no, I have it, and you put it nicely together with the right words and everything. But no, you come back to the same sutra and it goes still deeper and still deeper. And this is the amritam of life.
Exactly. And the one question I have to ask you related with this is there is now some group of people, especially in the West, especially in America, who are saying basically that we must not really consider Yoga Sutra as the most important text on yoga because it was written by a man, and that there is need to be a new text on yoga that has to be authored by some woman. What do you have to say about it being a woman? What is your reaction to it?
Well, I don't think we can improve on Patanjali, but we can only try to point out where you have to dig. you can point out, look, here you have to meditate and meditate and meditate more and more and more, and then something might come. But it has no end. The digging has no end, and that's the beauty.
Very, very interesting.
And when students realize this fact that you cannot hold it in time or on paper, but it has to be lived every time, new and new and new discoveries are coming up. When students do that, that's a great joy.
This brings to me to ask you another question. What has been the most challenging part for you in this journey of yoga? As a yoga student or as a teacher, what has been the most challenging part of this journey?
The most challenging part is to live it in daily life with your family. With your family members who are not students of yoga, who have other interests. This is the most challenging part.
I guess that I will not know that experience because I'm so privileged that all my family members are deeply rooted in yoga. So I'm very, very lucky.
Yes,
I don't have this challenge, Chandra. I have many other challenges, but I can understand this
okay.
because a lot of my students have actually shared that as well with me because, when many of them, they find it very difficult, especially when they are living with partners who are not interested in yoga or even spirituality for that matter. And that's a very big challenge. I really have a great respect for people who are able to do that. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Anyway, Chandra, now I let you an open mic where if you want to share something or say something to people, you can share that. I just want to say that your old study buddy, Sarah Ryan, is watching as well. And she says hello to you. So if you need to say something to her, you can say, or if you need to say something to everybody else, please, whatever comes to your heart, you can say it.
Well, I greet Sarah. I'm happy to be able to greet you. But what I want to share with everybody is that old age is fantastic. Old age is a privilege. Starting with the body, old age is a pain. You, of course, one becomes more slow. Everything goes slow, but that's okay. I have an arthritic body, but with the help of yoga, I'm able to manage. So the body is there, it changes as it wants, as it will change. It goes on, but I have the means to take care of the body. I do take care of the body, but that's it. Then there is the mind. Of course, you become slower. You talk slowly. You listen slowly. Sometimes you have to ask, what did you mean? Explain to me. I want to understand. But I find personally that with age, the mind sharpens. But the sharpness is in peace. There is no hurry. So the mind is seen as a good instrument. It is an instrument, but somehow not being in a hurry, not having to remember all the things that go wrong, not to have to remember all the time all the things that you have done wrong. When that burden is gone, because it's up to you to let it go or to hold it onto your back, then the mind is sharp and at peace. And you can see things and connections that are not so evident because the mind is sharp. It has become a good instrument. And then there is what we can call the spirituality. When we part off on this journey, we presume that consciousness is something inside, within, some tiny bit. Sometimes it becomes like a luminosity. Sometimes it becomes, can illumine a question, or it can illumine the whole mind. But still it is within. But now I'm in a stage with my 88 years where the luminosity is not within, it is everywhere. It is without. It is without and within. And I now see that we human beings are within this luminosity of consciousness. There is only consciousness, and within we are. So I am still seeing the without and the within. It is still a sort of a duality, but when I am really quiet, that duality becomes one. So old age, I feel, is a boon. Old age, you should not fear. You can have problems. We all have problems. But thanks to yoga, thanks to the practice of yoga, we can live with these problems. They're not a burden on us. We are not a burden on others. So old age is fine if you let it come. And if you practice yoga in the right spirit, then you will be able to let go of many things. And that is the greatest boon. You don't have to carry all the past on your shoulders.
That's so touching and so great message. But you should not even worry about it, Chandra, because you're still so young. You have many more years remaining. So
I am 16.
yes,
8 and 8 is 16.
you are sweet 16. Yes, that is fantastic. But it's so true what you said, because in the I think a few years ago, like 45, 50, 60 years ago, many people were not so concerned about aging. It's only recently that everybody is so worried about aging. And in Sanskrit also, it's very nice what you are saying about the illumination, both outside and inside, because in Sanskrit, the word for an older person is called vriddha, which means expanded, not physically, but what it means is that their consciousness is expanded through experience
Yes.
they have in life. That is called a vriddha. There's another word called jirna, which means well digested. So the elder is somebody who has digested their experiences in life and come to a greater sense of clarity. So I think that is a very beautiful thing that you said. And I think everybody will take that into their heart. I already see lots of reactions from people that they've really been very touched by what you have said. It's really, really wonderful, Chandra. I'm so happy that we did this interview. It's now almost an hour, so I think we should come to the conclusion of this. And before we conclude, what I want to say to everybody and to you particularly, Chandra, is that, you know, we have a very long history, you and me as well. And we have gone through many interesting experiences in life in the yoga journey, some which can be shared, some which cannot be shared, where it has been very joyful and where sometimes it has been, you've always been there also when there have been some very challenging moments in the history of, let's say, yoga, Viniyoga, whatever you want to call. And I remember many of these things. So, what I want to say to all of the people and to you in particular is that for me, just knowing you and sharing this journey with you all these years, that itself I consider one of the great blessings I have had in my life. So, thank you so much for being yourself and not trying to cut your hair and wear Western clothes like your friends were saying those days to be somebody else. Thank you for being your authentic self, which is what is most touching for me. And I really consider it as a great blessing just knowing you. And I'm sure many of your students also will feel that way. Many of them are watching together today. So thank you, Chandra, for being here today. And thank you, friends, for being here today. Thank you, Chandra.
Namaste.
Namaste.